Today, I have a fun discussion and plan today. I think it's going to be a lot of value for our audience. And this has an integration, and we're going to integrate things. That's what I like to do in this show. Is as you know, I'm a big fan of Rene Girard and mimetic theory, and I like to use mimetic theory as an interpretive tool for unlocking patterns and understanding human behavior and the way the world actually works. And I'm also a big critic of seed oils and toxic seed oil sludge and the huge elephant in the room impact that they've had in a negative way on our health, both in America in the last century and around the world now, because we've been able to export our dietary and hubris around the world by force in some sense. So I've got a guest who's got an interest in both worlds, and we're just going to kind of have a great conversation today. I have with us the Seed Oil Scout. Thank you for joining me, sir.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, Seed Oil Scout. So we can call it, that's me, and that's the name of the mobile app that I'm kind of my little war machine against big seed oil.
Well, good. I'm all hands on deck for the seed oil revolution, right? And I think that we need smart thinkers. We need people who are making solutions in the marketplace of various types, and it's going to take a huge effort to steer this ship around. And I think it can happen faster than we think, and we need to have that in mind as we try to figure out, okay, how are we going to strategize weaning people off of such a ubiquitous food item that is seemingly innocuous and is really driving so much of the disease states of chronic illnesses and even difficulty with recovery from acute illnesses and infectious diseases, the seed oil topic. And I used to say years ago when I was talking about seed oils on the radio, I kept saying, you wait, guys, because just like right now, everybody's, still getting into the keto thing, like the seed oil thing is going to be huge. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be in your grocery store marketing campaigns. It's going to hit the big league world very fast because, when ideas work and they're hitting the truth, they have a kind of, if it's a benefit to the person who's trying out the truth, then it's going to spread in a word of mouth way that's going to be surprising. I used to say it's going to be within 5 years, and it happened faster. It is happening. It's in the process. I don't think it's certainly on the scale of a keto in terms of mainstream consciousness. But I've always said, Seed Oil Scout, if we want to make this thing go fast and go mainstream very quickly, we've got to find a way to get the boomers on board, because I remember when I was doing keto and low carb stuff years ago, it was like, this is so alien. You don't want bread. I mean, this is basic nutrition. And those were the, kind of boomers in my life and stuff. And, once the keto thing hit their consciousness by whatever marketing, companies got behind it, keto is just an intuitive part of fabric of our cultural options for eating. And I think we've got to think of it that way with the power of the boomer impact in the economy. We got to think of that way for seed oil consciousness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think as you're pointing out, right, a lot of these things, there is kind of a moment where the polarity shifts and the broader kind of market leaders and forces kind of see that they need to catch up with the rebellion side of the movement. Otherwise, they're going to get left behind, right? And I mean, I think a lot of this, you can already see it in the grocery stores, right? One brand that's interesting for sure is Lesser Evil. They basically make popcorn and a lot of other snacks. But I mean, the only difference between Lesser Evil, which it has a Buddha on the front and everything, and a traditional bagged popcorn at the supermarket, is that they only use healthy oils, either ghee or coconut oil, right? And they don't explicitly say seed oils are evil, but it's kind of dog whistled and implied, right? And also even at Trader Joe's and stuff, most of the oils they have up front are olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. So I think, yeah, like things are shifting. I do think, that's part of the reason I kind of went after the restaurant problem, because I think it would take a lot longer to affect change there. Um, just because like restaurants run on such tight margins, and it's kind of opaque as to the consumer as what's going on in the kitchens. But I do think, like the way I guess gluten-free kind of gathered a lot of steam right now is pretty much accommodated for on like a wide variety of menus in every major city. I think like seed oil free can at least reach that level of notoriety.
Sure. Yeah. And and there's a way in which, these kind of strong niche interests can quickly scale up into almost an de facto imposition on the mainstream. I mean, like having a gluten-free option on your menu, like having a vegetarian option on your menu to kind of when you hit that critical mass of people who are like very deeply in opposition to not having an option for no seed oils on their menu, that would be a very great moment, right?
Yeah, yeah, completely. And I mean, it's like it's pretty inspiring because so I'm based in New York City, and I mean, we can maybe talk about why I built Seed Oil Scout a little bit. So,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, yeah, I'm based in New York City. Um, I have some friends who are food bloggers actually, and I would always be going out to these great restaurants with them. But separately, I was growing very concerned about like the science behind seed oils and stuff. And this was, I'd say, in the past like year and a half to 2 years. It was kind of shocking to me that like despite uh, having any like you're in the city, you're in New York City, right? And even if you didn't have a budget for your meal that evening, you wouldn't really necessarily be able to choose which oils your meal's being cooked in, right? Like raising your budget wouldn't necessarily help. In fact, like I found that many of the most hyped up and like most experimental fine dining restaurants actually use like the most transparent oils, right? Which are seed oils.
What do you
So
mean by transparent oils? That word?
well, I mean literally, but like as a flavor profile, they effectively
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. I get you're saying by flavor profile. Okay.
yeah, like when they're doing like certain kinds of like high heat cooking and stuff, if they really want to like say cook a scallop a certain way without like leaving any sort if they're not they might not want to use olive oil, say, or something, right? Like using seed oils allows them to kind of very directly like affect the food in a way that's they have more control over what's happening like directly. They're not imparting any flavor that they don't want to impart effectively,
Right.
right? So it's like I guess the point I'm making is if you're trying to avoid seed oils in a city, right, like you don't really have a market, a way to signal that to the market and like go to a restaurant that doesn't have seed oils, right? So I basically just was I'm a mobile app engineer. I lead a mobile app team at a traditional company. And I figured like, okay, if I had a notepad in my phone and I asked the waiter every time I went out to eat, what oils they cooked with, right? If I could just share that notepad with people, right, it would be more useful to them. So that's kind of like the first just thought experiment of what Seed Oil Scout is, right? And then the next iteration is just like, okay, like what if I put that notepad onto a map, and I gave it a search bar, and also other people could add to that, shared notepad effectively, right? So that's really all Seed Oil Scout is, right? It's like a community of people in it, but it's available throughout the country.
And is it meant to be exhaustive in like outlining all seed oil free options, or is it just meant to be like here's the baseline oils they cook with? This one item they do not use seed oil. Like how expansive and detailed and specific do you intend the information to be ideally for this app?
Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously it kind of has to be best effort, right? It can't ever really be exhaustive. I'd say
Right.
I'd say my goal really is to put everyone, no matter where you are in the country in any city, within say like 30 minutes or maybe let's say 15 to 30 minutes trip of a restaurant that they can be sure cooks with healthy oils, right?
Right.
I don't think it's realistic to get every restaurant in the country, right? Like, and I don't even know if that's necessarily like valuable,
Sure.
because most restaurants, frankly, just kind of use seed oils on everything, right? But I mean, the New York City map, right? Like I've uncut me and a couple other users who have really like stepped up have, we've uncovered tons of restaurants that mainly cook with healthy oils, and those are typically ones that, follow more classic kind of cuisine, right? Like whether it be French, Spanish, Italian.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, the way it typically goes and the way the process kind of works, right? So I built some tools that make it very easy to contact the restaurants. Uh, when you open the restaurant on the map, the app will scrape their website for an email address. And then with a single button, you can send this prompt that I wrote up that's fairly generic, but specific enough that it typically gets a good answer.
What's it
It
say?
uh,
You have to give me the full rundown, but the basic gist.
it effectively says a member of my party is allergic to seed oils, and then lists out the seed oils, but they are fine with, say, olive oil, coconut, avocado, and animal fats. And then it says, do you use these in your sauces or aiolis or to cook proteins? And then anything to avoid in particular, which is a good kind of, I find that it's good to have them list out, the no-goes,
Right.
rather than, I don't know, it's very hard. It's tough to ask restaurants about this. The reason I mostly go via email is because, like, when you're eating at a restaurant, the restaurant's so busy that for like a kind of exhaustive line of questioning, which, we'll get down to the level of like, what about your aiolis? What about your mayo? Um, if the restaurant's busy, they're kind of not thrilled about this line of questioning usually, and
Right.
frankly, often you just don't get good information.
We
They
ask it at the restaurant level when you're there, right? Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
right, but even if you ask the waiter, right? Like I've had
Okay.
waiters be wrong, right? Like
Oh, yeah, that
they're like,
happens to me all
oh,
the time because I was like, I was saying that stuff, and they'll argue with, oh, it's buttered. I'm like, let me see your
yeah,
butter, and they bring out
no,
country crock, and I'm like, okay, that's not buttered. I'm sorry,
exactly.
and you have to, and I'm, at least for me, I'm very empathetic because I'm always the guy that's like, oh God, I can't stand that guy over there who's talking about all their weird little allergies and harassments and vegan and this and gluten and this, and it's like, oh my goodness, I don't want to be that person. So it makes you question your sense of rightness in your own mind because you're like, is this just another manifestation of the mimetic contagion of always having to have the next special boy
Right.
niche to differentiate your new little tribe of contrarians that are self-righteously judging the establishment by which you're eating at, and you're always like, no, but it's not, it's true. And so you have this internal
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance in your head to ask those questions when you just want to have a good time and have a meal, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, frankly, I'm so averse to asking at the restaurant. Like that's a big part of the reason I built the app, right? Because
Yeah,
I want to know ahead of time. Um, because if you can just steer people to a restaurant that effectively doesn't use seed oils and you verified via email before, you're happy and you're set. Like asking, it's very human to be annoyed by someone kind of like setting themselves out from the group. It's like, oh, I can't eat what you all eat,
right.
right?
There's a natural instinct to be mimetically annoyed of that because it's like,
Yes.
it's an imposition of scandal, really. If
Right,
you
exactly.
and a lot of it has to do with the way you ask something and the tone and the vibe and everything that you communicate rather than what you're asking, really. Right.
Yeah. No, totally. And I mean, like, I think I think that, food, I kind of pose like dietary restrictions and diets as almost like a stand-in in some way for religion.
Absolutely.
In
Yeah.
like a world where, God is kind of dead for most people. It's, a lot of times, right? Like when you take someone who effectively like applies keto to their life or becomes a vegan, right? It looks a lot like applying a religion would, right? Like there's typical
Absolutely.
like thought leaders for that movement. You follow their rules. You literally have like these almost like ritual like restrictions and prohibitions, right?
Absolutely. And virtual,
Um,
and you have these virtual rating fights where your tribe
yeah,
is battling another tribe on Twitter or some message board or something, right?
yeah, absolutely. And it becomes, tied for very closely to your identity, right? So I think it is, but for that reason, it is, it is sensitive to
Because
people,
you're
right?
bringing
Like,
up religion in their first conversation with the people at the restaurant. You're
right,
basically, when you start, I mean, it doesn't have to be this way. Let's be clear, but oftentimes the way it happens, it's like, hey, do you cook with butter or canola, soybean? Da, 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 da. And it's like you're almost, and most of the people, it's still not mainstream enough that most people don't even know what vegetable oils are, right? In
right,
America. But for those
yeah,
who are kind of okay, they can vaguely sense out. Sounds like you're asking me, are you Mormon? Or are you Catholic? Or are you Buddhist? They feel that vibe, right? Like, what are you saying? Is this? Are you asking me what
yes,
religion I am? This is very uncomfortable, right?
yes. They're often, yeah, a bit off put. And it's funny, a lot of people ask me, how do you know the restaurant isn't lying to you about their seed oil
Right?
usage?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
but I find that question funny because it's like the restaurant doesn't think that they're using like bad oils, so
Right.
that
Yeah.
they're not gonna lie. They don't you know what I mean? Like they're not really trying to trick you because they don't think that the oils are like bad or evil, right? Like
But they
they're just
themselves may be tricked because of their own ignorance about what is it, that big thing we get that we use. It says, but a lot of them get
yeah, that's true too.
they
I
get
mean,
they get confused by like when it'll say butter spread made with butter, and they're like, okay, that's butter, because that's how these advertising techniques manipulate people, even on like a subconscious level. It's like it says it's got butter, and they're like, but it's with butter. Look at the other ingredient on the comma. Oh,
yeah, no,
canola too, right? And then it's like, oh, okay. So a lot of them are just, just like all of us, they're kind of manipulated and conditioned by the psychological violence of clever marketing techniques, on the packaging and so forth.
yeah, no, I mean that part of it is obviously hard to, hard to fight, right? I mean, if we go back all the way, I'm actually, I don't know, I'm reading a book on olive oil fraud called Extra Virginity, which is pretty interesting.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's not even labeled and it's outright outright fraudulent, right? But yeah, no, I mean, and I think,
But, oh, go ahead.
oh, well, I was just going to say that I think the education will kind of permeate the the mainstream. It definitely, and grocery stores I think will be first, and restaurants are always are I think a bigger problem for sure.
Yeah, and that's I think it's a noble effort, and it's something I've thought a lot about is how do we deal with the restaurant thing and how would that look like, and different levels of looking at that. But we offer such a restaurant oriented culture, and in terms of the average American experience, whether they're working class or upper middle class or wealthy, so many folks are going and relying on restaurants of various types to feed their family or themselves on a regular basis. Sometimes every meal of the day, sometimes one or two meals a day, sometimes one meal every other week. To some degree, there's a huge spectrum, and the spectrum tends to, I think, lean towards frequent visitation of restaurants in a week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple different like layers of the problem, I think, right? And there, like I'd say the fast casual market is one. That's probably where the bulk of seed oils outside of the home are being consumed. And I
What do
don't
you
think,
mean? Why do you say that versus like fast food?
so, okay, I guess fast casual, I mean fast food. Okay, so fast food,
Because I thought those are two different. Like I thought like
you're
fast
right.
foods, McDonald's, and fast casual would be like Chipotle, right? Or no?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So I guess what I meant there was like, people who, I was kind of approaching it from the frame of like people who think they're eating healthy, but are being duped. If you're,
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, okay. So you're saying those who are trying to eat healthy. So
yeah,
if you look at it like a target market of who you want to adopt to your message, and you're saying my target market for this message is those who are wanting to eat healthy, that the most damage they're doing to themselves are these little kind of trendy fast casual places that present themselves as a step above fast food. That's right.
yeah, that's
Okay.
that I'd say so, right? Like, I think, you kind of you look at like a Taco Bell and a McDonald's and stuff as like a black box of God knows what, God knows what, right? They, when if you're going to Chipotle, like, I mean, in college, I ate Chipotle like twice a day, like many days, right? And, say Sweetgreen, right? Like, and honestly, like with something like Sweetgreen, I mean, I haven't dug into this too much, but, and even like dig in and stuff, like their ingredient sourcing, I think is otherwise like pretty reasonable. I think they do try to like get local produce when they can and stuff like that. It
Right.
just,
But then they cook their meats all in oils, right?
yes. And yeah, we have guides for all of them in the app. But so that's that I guess what I'm saying is, that's probably where by weight, let's take, people who want to eat healthy as like the market, right, of people, we're addressing, as like, and then looking at like where their seed oil consumption is coming from, right? By like ounces of seed oils, it's probably mostly the fast casual places because they probably eat there the most often, I'd say, right? And then you have like, and also changing one of them would affect like great change, right? Like, so if Sweetgreen or Chipotle, if Chipotle stopped using seed oils, like that would mean many meals would be seed oil free, right? Whereas, each individual like mom and pop restaurant, say New York City, is kind of its own thing, making its own decisions, right? So
Right.
I guess they're kind of two separate worlds, and I
Is your
just
goal to try to pressure some of these big fast casual chains to be early adopters to create a mimetic contagion that will translate into more of their market going that direction, and then eventually that trickling into pressure on lower end fast food restaurant chains and then the higher end mom and pop restaurants to kind of network mimetically move that direction? Is that what your thought is, maybe?
Yeah, that's kind
Good.
of what I'm getting at. I mean, so the like individually owned mom and pop restaurants are actually a very broad spectrum, right? Like, to open a restaurant, you're typically a chef and you're very passionate about food.
In New York
Many of
City, in American heartland, you're someone
Sure.
who may be a little bit different. I mean, it could be a wonderful cook or chef too, but it's a different world there. But
No, yeah, absolutely. Right. So I guess, yeah, mom and pop, it's a whole spectrum, I guess, is what I'm getting at, right? So the point is, there are mom and pop places who are like vocally anti-seed oil, and there are a decent number of them. You can usually find one or two in each city. New York has a couple more. But then, the all the major fast casual chains are, they're a massive capitalist, publicly traded company, right? But they will respond to some, a mimetic contagion if it is profitable, right? And I mean, for it to be like a true mimetic contagion, it would be profitable, right? The same way like gluten-free is, they mark whether things have gluten on their menu, right? They would do the same for seed oils and definitely, try to accommodate for it. I mean, it's tough. I will say, like, Mexican food in particular has been hard. Scouting out New York, I don't think I've found a single seed oil free taco place. Just because there's the conversation's very far. The Overton window is pretty far off in re-embracing like saturated animal fats, which is what I believe like Mexican food would traditionally be cooked with. So otherwise, they're just they don't really want to use olive oil because it has kind of its own flavor.
right.
So they end up, being just sticking with seed oils. So, but like someone like Sweetgreen, you could see them if it became, because they're a bit even like on the healthier spectrum than say Chipotle. Like
Mhm.
you could see public kind of outrage, at least compelling them to have, some some of their dressings move over to olive oil instead of sunflower oil. But yeah, I believe they cook. I'd have to double check in the app, but I believe they also cook their proteins in sunflower oil, which, yeah, that's a tough one. But
Um,
I think it could absolutely be shifted by market forces, right? And like
yeah, yeah.
they're big, like Rogan's constantly talking about seed oils. Like this is being discussed by nearly, everyone has, maybe, I don't know, I might be in a bubble, but
I
it
think
seems
you
like a
are
lot of
to some
people,
degree in a bubble, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like there's the Twitter world, and it's very easy to get caught up in the, and I think it's a bubble that's quickly breaking slowly and gradually. I mean, kind of in fits and starts, because I am hearing average people in. I mean, I heard the other day I was in a Walmart and they were saying, "Hey, mom, don't touch that. That's got vegetable oil in it." And I was like, "Holy shnikes, this is crazy." I mean, I remember feeling like this was going to take a long time to get to that critical mass, but so it is trickling out. But I think the danger of like the Twitter worlds and stuff is that there's this assumption that like, oh, because it's high, there's this big energy on this platform, therefore it's translating in the same kind of uh, ratio of understanding or percentage of understanding of the population is growing onto this idea too. But I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I mean, the main reason I built the app, right? Because, that there's me deciding not to eat seed oils for myself, right? I did that because I thought they were unhealthy, but I wouldn't have built the app unless I thought people would be using it, right?
Right.
And the reason I kind of built it was because of the number of separate online communities, like truly separate online communities that were very vocally concerned about seed oils, right? Like, I was seeing it in so many separate places that I was like, okay, surely if I build this app, there will be people excited about it. It
Right.
wasn't just tied to like one. I probably was first exposed to it from like crypto Twitter, right? But it wasn't like just a crypto Twitter thing. I was seeing it popping up in all sorts of other places. So that's kind of why what led me to be like, okay, this is something worth building. It's like a movement that's a bit broader, and I kind of, politically, I mean, I don't like to harp on the politics of it too much because it's like, food's food and it's science is science and lipids are lipids, but it's kind of it seems to have captured like anyone, I'd say left or right, but on the more like libertarian, anti-authoritarian scale of the axes, right? If the if the vertical, I don't know, the vertical axes on a chart are say like authoritarian on top and libertarian on the bottom, and authoritarian being like, the mainstream media complex and stuff like that. And then we
Right.
have left and right. It's like everyone left and right, but like more on the leaning, like kind of anti-establishment is, I think, waking up to the seed
Yeah.
oil
Yeah. You
situation.
mentioned like your Instagram following is a little bit different, right? It leans a little bit more female, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
And then
just
your Twitter following is a little bit more leaning male, libertarian, Bitcoin fan. Your Instagram is a little bit more plant based, and yet, and it's interesting from a Gerardian standpoint how there's like a mimetic mirroring effect going on, right? Because those different platforms are using different means of communication and culture sharing, and so obviously Instagram more of a female oriented platform in general. I don't not specific about the numbers, but Twitter probably, I don't know where it actually lands, but I mean, there is obviously a little bit more carve out for male centric topics like Bitcoin and that community. And so they're going to lean towards carnivore, which is going to be a mirror of the plant based, more hegemonic discourse, right? Of the female centered, but a crowd of more mainstream plant based narratives, and like we were saying, before the show, that we can, and I'm trying to kind of use the Gerardian thing as a way, in a good way in this case, to try to find a scapegoat, to build a common alliance of these different factions, to say, you know what, you say tomato, I say tomato, you say, it's beef, and you say it's a piece of arugula, but let us all unite around this enemy. That this is really, let's put aside our differences and let's come together on this one thing that we can build a huge coalition around. And I think that's the exciting thing about this, right?
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as you're saying, like food is religion, right? But like, I think people, I think that the major like evil is just highly processed food, right? And there's all these different communities are feeling a lot better just eating more whole local foods, right? I think that's kind of the main takeaway, right? But
that's not, but it's not really though, because like you said, restaurants, if you're going in getting restaurant food on a daily or every other day basis, and you're getting a Chipotle bowl, that doesn't look like processed food to you. And that's where you're getting your seed oil toxicity for the day.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm, sorry, I was trying to say of the people who have adopted like a anti-seed oil diet, right? And maybe they're cooking at home a lot, right? Like I'd say what I was going to say is like the common thread is that they're avoiding these processed foods, which is why they're probably all feeling better.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're saying on the common thread, the common thread that's making all of these little camps have benefit and then argue past each other is that they are getting some serious tangible benefits from having removed processed foods in general, and therefore removing the level of toxicity that they're engaging in. Right.
Right. Absolutely. So so I think giving like a name and an identity to that, scapegoat and movement is going to be very powerful, right?
Because I think it's seed oils. We have to name it.
Yes. No. Yeah. I mean, that's why the app is called Seed Oil Scout, right? Because I think the name it's clearly like a strong derogatory name, right? That kind of has like a sticking power. So I think that is, so there's one chain in New York, which is a fast casual chain based in New York called Springbone. I've had a call with the founder. He's been very supportive of the Seed Oil Scout movement. But they're vocally anti-seed oil. They have like signs up in the restaurants that they.
How long have they been on this game, on this campaign or whatever?
That's a good question. I think I want to say, a couple years, but not too long.
Wow.
But
how long have you been aware? How long have you been aware of seed oils in terms of the severity of the problem? Because we've all kind of known for many years. If you're in the nutritional conversation space, it's, too much omega-6 can cause problems. And then there was the whole omega-3 to omega-6 ratio thing, but it was always kind of a muddled conversation. And it never really got to the point of saying, wow, really, these things are the huge elephant in the room of so much of the problems with diseases. So when did you catch on to that?
It was definitely like mid-COVID for me, cooking a lot for myself. And listening to a lot of podcasts because of like, kind of the quarantine stuff. So listening to a lot of like, crypto podcasts and other stuff like that, and VC podcasts and stuff, and hearing this stuff come up, kind of the same way I got into reading Gerard also probably.
So Gerard helped you see seed oil truth? Or is that what you were saying there? I remember.
I was more saying that COVID kind of locked me alone with a lot of podcasts.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Exposed me to certain ideas, and I don't know. Yeah.
As the show that kind of put the Gerardian thing into the podcast world years ago, and then was an early pioneer on the broadcast. I'm not going to say podcast because there were certainly nutritional podcasts that were talking about seed oils for a while before I did, but bringing it to the radio broadcast mainstream format of the everyday masses, I am very delighted, but also mimetically a little bit uncomfortable with so many new people integrating Gerard and seed oils. I mean, I'm just being honest. You always get that. Well, wait a second, that was my niche. But you're happy because you're like, this is a life break. This is breakthrough information, and so you just have to have that kind of paradoxical, piece about it. Like, wow, this is awesome. It's just more important than selfish considerations of wanting to get, well, that's my thing. It's like, no, this is a good thing. And you need to get over that fleshly desire to want to be the monopoly on it. Right. It's like, no, be more creative, and be more. Yeah. And I've been that way all, I've been trying to always be like a team player of like, okay, I want to be a Johnny Appleseed to plant if these things are true, they are good in and of themselves. And there's always that balance between like, and this is more of a big picture thing, but like, there's always that balance between that like Buddhist and like Tolstoy idea of like, no, it's all about the pursuit of the truth. Don't worry about trying to carve out a way to make money for yourself. But then there's also that, well, yeah, but if you harness the power of market action, it can actually accelerate the growth of the truth in the right direction. And there's always a tension there when you're bringing something like these ideas uh, to the people or whatever, right? So
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And I mean, I think the reason, like, both, I mean, it's kind of funny to try to make parallels between the two, but I'd say that what strikes me as a parallel between trying to take seed oil, seed oil knowledge mainstream and Gerard mainstream is that they both have fairly complex, they're both fairly complex, like to fully understand the mechanics, right? There's kind of a lot going on, and
right,
you have to dive in a bit, right? But I think what falls out as more and more people get on board, like these very effective memes fall out of them, and then they start spreading more quickly. Right? Like, because I mean, Gerard in a lot of ways is extremely complex, but also extremely simple. Right? It's like you almost couldn't have a more simple
right.
philosophy, right? Like people copy each other. And with seed oils, it's like, for me, definitely spent a lot of time like reading lipid science and trying to understand what's going on. And then it's like eventually it just hits you. It's like, wait, just like don't eat stuff that dripped out of a factory that your great grandparents would have never been exposed to, and no one in history's really eaten, right? Like, I mean, and that's just like a simple rule, right? So it's like, sometimes it can be hard to find the right messaging, and as an individual, it's like basically impossible, right? But as the ideas gain steam, people the memes kind of organically emerge that allow the ideas to really spread, I feel like.
And how do we, because again, I've mentioned before the program that I've tried to take a kind of tortoise approach in the sense of how can I, and that's one of the reasons why I've engaged this. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started the radio broadcast project that we're doing. We have both a podcast, which we're doing right now, and then we have the radio show that we do on a daily basis in a current events oriented, but also topical format. But just talking to you out loud, I know that you're kind of in a different space, what your target market is right now, but just since you are obviously, gifted in the world of persuasion and advertising and marketing to some degree, right? Obviously, from what you've explained about your background, how do you think, just for my own advice to me, how can I better, or how can we in general better help, I guess the boomers adopt this? I mean, obviously, you can just say, well, they're not early adopters on these types of edge nutritional things, so just let it build up from the youth, and they'll catch on. But I mean, how do we kind of help plant the seeds for that happening faster rather than because obviously, memes are just not going. I mean, maybe I'm discounting it, but I would think that memes are not going to really hit the zeitgeist of boomers who are in direct acute need of radically getting away from seed oils very fast. And whereas
Right.
a lot of younger people, they have a little bit more runway for their health consequences to kind of get off of the seed oil deal.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about how to message it to people who are less online,
Right.
frankly, is it's definitely interesting, right? And I mean, when I say meme, I mean the term sort of broadly, right? Like I
Right.
mean like cultural memes. Like I even
Sure.
consider the term seed oil sort of, that's kind of like a meme itself, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, I definitely, I'm basically only marketing the app online and social media, right? Or I'm not marketing, but promoting, say, like, doing content and stuff. So I I'm trying to think of some ways to hit home. I mean, I think we'd want to look at like what has worked, right? I mean, um, that I guess, mm, you'd need to have like maybe trusted, you know, people voices that they listen to kind of take on the movement and say that they've like cut seed oils out from their diet. Like, I mean, I know like I know like GQ did an article about say like Bear Grylls, who I don't know if you know who he is, but he was like a big survival
Yeah.
expert on the Discovery Channel. He had some big interview where they said in the headline that he removed seed oils from his diet, right? Like I think you would need people who they look up to and respect. Maybe like some younger athletes could be like a good sort of like say like a Tom Brady, right? Like Tom Brady,
Right. Yeah, that'd be
his
huge. Yeah.
his diet, well, he definitely doesn't eat seed oils, right? Like his diet is like very it's actually very funny. So like one of my biggest, like most successful blog posts was this scientist named Andrew Huberman, who he's a Stanford neuro-ophthalmologist, and he has a very big podcast about basically just like science-based tools for everyday life, right? Like he goes through scientific studies to help you kind of optimize your life, everything from like viewing the sun in the morning to this to that. But you know, he answered an AMA question about seed oils, and he says, you know, I'm not convinced of the science, the literature is back and forth. And then he finally says, like, I only eat grass-fed butter and olive oil, right? So a lot of these people, a lot of like these big health influencers, you know, they won't eat, the science is complex, and it's very hard to do good randomized control trials on diet, right? So they won't come out and say like, this is definitely bad, but they also won't eat seed oils. So I think though, like Tom Brady's a good example, right? Like he didn't say like, he didn't phrase it like that or in like a simple actionable way, but he definitely, like, his low inflammatory diet, and like he basically almost doesn't cook with any oil, I think, I forget. But so I think you know, culture always kind of is gonna have to trickle down from like tastemakers, right? And
Right.
I think I think what we could hope for is like the most influential, like, boomer voices
Right.
effectively like do pick it
Like
up
if Trump,
from the internet.
if you get a Trump or something, well, but if you get that, then
Right.
it's going to go it's going to get really partisan, which I've already seen it kind of getting a little bit close to that already. That's not good.
Right,
But
exactly. No,
you
yeah,
got him
that's
to
like a
say no seed oils. It's huge. Nobody do seed oils. Ban them. You know, that would be a big thing for tens of millions of people. And you know, get Oprah to say it too. And now you're moving things forward or something. You know, on that front of that mass media kind of thing for that age group.
Yeah, I mean, you
You
have
know?
to hope that someone on their teams, like some younger person who, I don't know, writes their speeches or whatever, like hands it to them as like, oh, this will be hip and cool. Say that you
Right,
hate
right.
seed
Just say it.
oils.
Just say it into the
Yeah,
camera. We'll tell you later what it's all about. What
yeah,
what about like what about the glass ceiling that we're going to run into with all of the marketing power and momentum and ideological currency for social status around the plant-based phenomenon, right? Like, because
yeah,
obviously that's the elephant in the room that's going to hold back this uh, uh, thing from becoming a very dominant trend, is that there's going to be a lot of forces in various ways, ideologically, financially, whatever, saying no, 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 we're not letting this catch on because this is going to be a direct affront in some people's minds to the philosophy of moving towards a plant-based world, for food.
yeah. No, totally. I mean, I think that's that will be a massive headwind, right? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Zero Acre Farms.
Yes, I am.
Um,
I've interviewed
yeah,
the founder. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, awesome. So, you know, their approach is definitely an interesting one, right? Which is, you know, use science and genetically, or sorry, I don't think they're, anyway, use bacteria to kind of create a better, you know, harm-free oil. Um, and you know, they have a bit of a war chest to do some marketing, and I'm sure they'll be more creative. Like, you know, what you always have when you're trying to disrupt an incumbent industry is, frankly, you have your creativity, your drive, and your energy, right? And you know, they're kind of the incumbent, and they're just, you know, while they'll do their best to suppress the movement, their ideas are going to be a bit stale, most likely. You know, like I don't like, right. I think so. You know, take like my Instagram following, right? Like the way I got a lot of my followers was a coconut yogurt brand called the Coconut Cult. Found my app and started posting about it, right? And a lot of their followers are, you know, plant-based, right? But they just, the Coconut Cult, they have like 90,000 followers. They make unbelievably good coconut yogurt. It's really great. And they you know, that they're vocally against seed oils, right, on their account, like against oat milk and stuff like that, because you know they believe in like a whole food plant-based approach, right? So
So,
I mean,
seed on a little conscious sense of differentiation between competitors in the market, right? And to say, hey,
right, yeah, I mean,
based, right? It's the
yeah, I think again, like targeting the enemy is like processed factory food, or like, you know, I like cartoon food, right? Like stuff that's just not really of the like physical realm and hasn't existed until like, you know, uh, like 100 years ago or whatever, right? Like that's kind of, I think, where everyone needs to focus their efforts against, right? And you know, it's, you know, there are a lot of good plant-based options, right? Like, I mean, you can do a ton of cooking in olive oil, right? Like Europe manages to get by with
right.
some country, like I found some funny, like a map on Reddit of like European countries by whether or not they use like olive oil or butter. It's basically like the further south you are, the more olive oil you use. But like, yeah, countries like Spain and stuff almost primarily use olive oil for everything, including deep frying, which I'm not even sure. I don't think that's really necessarily the best option, but you know,
That's
there's
what that's what I was going to say. Is it's like, well, first of all, I want to talk about the instrument thing. Reached out or reach out to like Instagram influencer women to get them to, you know, that women want to, you know, imitate mimetically and get them on the whole. Hey, I use the Seed Oil Scout app. I mean, is that part of your approach?
yeah, yeah. So honestly, like I'm figuring out like you know, we have about like when I say it is just me.
Right. It's a
So
very
yeah,
recent project.
yes, well, yeah. So I built that myself, and I'm very good at that. I've managed like a, you know, major like production app at a tech company. So the coding part is, you know, my bread and butter. It's just the promotion side is I've been kind of, you know, figuring out myself, but it's been going well. It's just I am trying to like figure out, you know, it can be so there's a spectrum in the like the influencer world, right? Like some people really are, you know, down for the mission and actually want to end seed oils, and they'll find my app and they'll instantly just share it, right?
Right.
But other
Or
people,
earned media versus paid media, right?
yes, yeah. Yeah, I'm not doing any like paid marketing,
Right.
but like, you know, the other influencers would want like, you know, because it's their job, right, to promote health stuff. Like they don't necessarily want to promote my app for no reason, right? Like they would want, like they just kind of see that nothing's in it for them necessarily to promote the app. So I'm trying to find ways to kind of, I don't know, basically like whether it's some in-app functionality or some way to kind of get them more involved. But like one thing that's definitely worked, right, is partnering with the restaurants.
Right.
So I do verified features, where basically like for restaurants that are vocally anti-seed oil, right, they're basically like crusaders. Like one of them, I haven't verified them yet, but Hearth in New York City, run by Chef Marco Canora, and he's been against seed oil since they opened in 2003. And my first big verified report I did was for a place called Modern Stone Age Kitchen, run by Dr. Bill Schindler in Delaware, and they do all this like, you know, heritage sourdough and like nose to tail stuff. And so what I basically been doing to try to promote the app, right, is like I make lists and featured like blog posts, right? Like, oh, like a spotlight on this restaurant that you know, only cooks with like local you know, ingredients, like in kind of this heritage way, right? And then, you know, me and them, the restaurant, both post it, right? So the restaurant gets more people into Seed Oil Scout, and I try to get more people to the restaurant. Or I posted like a
And
list of all the.
that's
Oh
how
yeah.
you generate the monetary revenue part of the project. Or?
So there's not really much.
I'm just saying, what's
We,
the model for how it's going to get to that point of revenue?
right. So you can kind of think of it as like a three-sided marketplace to some degree, right? So there's I call them civilians, which are just people looking for a place to eat. There's scouts who are contacting these restaurants and filing reviews. And then there's the restaurants, right? So I want to avoid chart right now. The app basically isn't generating much money, right? Like we're kind of in the, you know, I'd say like the basically, so there's a marketplace in the app, right? And right now I'm selling Masa chips, which is a friend of mine's that they make tortilla chips that are, you know, fried in grass-fed beef tallow.
Right.
And that's like a great new product. They're doing very well, right? So I integrated it so you could purchase those in the app, right? So I want to build out that marketplace.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, well, because you know, it's you kind of you know, there's a whole, as there are limited options at restaurants, there are definitely limited options for, you know, direct to consumer food that's shelf stable that you can keep in your home.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there are, you know, new companies coming out all the time that are providing these healthier options, right? So
And they
I want
they need a billboard of people who are educated about seed oils to get it, you know, right?
right, and I can build out reviews and for them as well, right? Which I think would be useful. But so that's like I've sold some chips, so there's some money coming in there, but it's not really, it's definitely not enough to live off of. I mean, the server costs are pretty cheap, right? So the thing could just run. But so I'm trying to avoid ever charging a subscription for users, right? Like
Sure.
the people, because I think that'll just kind of kill momentum and it kind of kill the spirit of the project. So I think, you know, I'm not charging restaurants either for the verification, but I think one thing that, you know, could be nice is if I build out like some analytics tools or like tools for restaurants to kind of interact with people in the app, right? Like maybe, you know, a way to let them update their menu or answer questions and view how many people are, you know, looking at the restaurant in the app and stuff. Maybe I could charge some monthly fee to the restaurant.
Right.
But I think really like building out the marketplace.
So a seed oil scout plus or deluxe for the
Right, for the
restaurant
restaurants.
services for, you know, for actual analytics and stuff, right?
Yeah, because I mean, you know, let's say I charge them like, you know, 10 or 20 bucks a month, right? Like that's definitely, that's worth like, you know, one or two extra people a month coming into the restaurant, right? Like that's pretty easy to cover. And I already had my first verified restaurant is a place called Marco Roma Pizzeria outside of Chicago. They use like tallow in their beef fryer and everything, in their deep fryer and everything. And you know, they told me that just separately, like after I put the verified review on, they were like, "Oh, someone came in and said they found it on the app." So I think that'll be good, right? Like you want to kind of the the you know, the civilians are in the app to spend money, and the restaurants are in the app to kind of like make money, right? So it seems like charging the restaurants makes more sense.
Right.
But
So
I think
you think that would be the primary revenue generator, or the marketplace would be the primary in the ideal scenario of how do you think it would unfold?
I think it would be it would I think it would be a mix, right? Like you know, I think Yelp primarily, like their revenue primarily comes from the restaurant side. Um, they don't have a marketplace because they don't have like a kind of very specific
Right.
demographic, right? Like
Sure.
you go there for everything, right? But because you know, I can be pretty sure that someone who is very against seed oil is like, I kind of know that there's, you know, some set of products that they might be interested in, right? Now, I mean, it is interesting because I do probably want to appeal to carnivores and like more plant-based dieters, right? Like say like, you know, if I wanted to sell the coconut yogurt from the coconut cult, but I also wanted to sell like, I don't know, like the carnivore bar and stuff, like figuring out how to message that is, you know, interesting, but I think I can do it, right?
Right.
Even if it's just like asking people when they open the app, like a little survey about their, you know, their dietary choices and tailoring their content for them.
Is your
But yeah,
goal to be ubiquitous in every American diner, possibly to be able to be in the heartland America, and everywhere you go, you can find a great map of seed oil free friendly options around you?
yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? So, and if you open the app and you zoom out, I'd say in every major metropolitan, we probably have like one seed oil free option now. LA is very well covered. New York is completely like New York's we've got great. I did a lot of work in Austin. San Francisco has a couple options, but like even a lot of the longer tail, smaller cities, and like metropolitan areas have some options. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I definitely want to uncover every restaurant that like cares about this, right? And I feel
Right.
like as the app gets notoriety, I think the restaurants will hear about it from and they'll come to me. That's what
Do,
that's
do
what I'm
you,
hoping for.
does your app have the ability to account for menu hacks? Like, for example, a lot of times, functionally speaking, in much of America, when you were talking about those fast casual chains, actually, if you want to avoid, seed oils fast and quickly and casually, it's better to get your food in the drive-through at one of the major chains like McDonald's than it is to go to these higher end fast casual chains because, like for example, from what I understand, a lot of like their beef patties and stuff like that are not cooked in vegetable oils, whereas a higher end like a Chipotle would be cooked in vegetable oils and like so, like, do you account? Does your app have an ability to account, or will it have an ability to account for those menu hack options? So, if you're in a food desert, so to speak, you can be like, well, actually, yeah, you can actually like eat, 3 patties of if you want beef and cheese and whatever, lettuce and tomato. You can have a kind of beef salad or of some sort on the go while you're traveling. I know a lot of people do that are aware of seed oils.
Yeah, so I could that's interesting, and I should definitely dive more into that. I mean, right now, like pretty much any user can write a review for a single restaurant, right? So they could enter in the menu hacks themselves. But for the major chains, I have entered in the information myself. Um, I could definitely, if anyone on Twitter wants to shout out some great hacks, I can add them to the entry for the major chain. But like I'm looking at like the Shake Shack entry I have here, and for Shake Shack, I mentioned that like if you get like just the patty lettuce wrapped, like that wouldn't have seed oils, right? So
Right.
I try to basically spell out like reading, let's see, like here's my description for McDonald's. In general, the buns contain soybean oil. Fries are done in a blend of canola and other oils. Patties and sausages are seed oil free. Crispy patties are a no-go. Ketchup and mustard do not contain seed oils. All other sauces contain soybean oil. And then I give you a link to the menu allergen
Do you
ingredient
give it a
list.
different color if it's like not default seed oil free friendly, but hackable seed oil friendly? That might help to give it a different color markers. Like, okay, so I can go to my local McDonald's and I can hack my way to a seed oil free meal. But here, I don't have to hack. I can just order the meal as it is and I'll get a seed oil free meal. That would be
So the
helpful.
rating, the rating scale, I
Oh,
can break
okay.
down
I'm not,
very
I haven't
quickly.
used the app. So I'm not, so I'm shooting in
No,
the
yeah,
dark.
yeah. I think it's funny. It's fun to talk through it. So the rating scale, there's kind of 3 colors, and it's five. It goes through 5 stars, right? So the red is dined shamefully, which means that in the spirit of what the restaurant serves, you can't enjoy a seed oil free meal, right? So that would mean like if it's a pizza place and the sauce has seed oils, right? Like there's literally no way you can eat what they serve. Or take Katz's Deli in New York, right? Like a famous Jewish deli. They use seed oils in their bread. So for me, that's dined shamefully. You can't have a sandwich at Katz's. That's a no-go. You're in the red. And then orange, the tag is dined cautiously. Orange is generally the restaurants come back and they say we use seed oils a lot, but you can substitute, right? And they generally in their email response. So the email responses are tagged on almost every, like an image, a screenshot of the email is tagged on almost every restaurant review, and they generally give you some options. Like let's see, I can pull one up here just as an example, maybe. Um, I don't know. Yeah, basically, okay. Orange, they'll list out, good substitutions, right?
Mhm.
Like here's one. There are always ways to work with allergies, and we will do everything we can to make the experience seamless. There are opportunities to cook, blah blah blah. As far as the aiolis, it would depend what you order. Okay, this one's very vague, but some of them are more specific where they give you options, right? So, dine cautiously means like you're gonna have to talk to the server to avoid seed oils, but you can do it.
Right.
And then 4 star plus is dine happily. That's generally reserved for just avoid the deep fryer and probably their mayo. and everything else is cooked in like olive oil, butter, etc. And then dine fearlessly is 5 stars. And that means that the restaurant does not have any seed oils in the house in their salad dressings, aiolis, or the deep fryer.
That's going to be very few and far between in a lot of places, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Like
I
you have
mean,
like Outback that I know that there. I mean, I'm in Florida, so I'm in Central Florida, Tampa Bay area. You know, that Outback chain was started in Florida. I mean, in Tampa, I believe, and I think they use beef tallow in their fryers, from what I understand. Do you have them in your map?
so yes,
Yeah.
they're listed in the chain reports, and I emailed back and forth with them a bit. Um, they claim that it's pure beef tallow in the fryer, and um, from what I saw though on their restaurant ingredient list, or sorry, on their ingredient list, you have to be pretty careful with like the other sauces and stuff. Like
Right.
otherwise I would very much clarify, but I
Yeah.
think you can have a bloomin' onion and it's deep fried in tallow.
But the
There
sauce with it is probably going to be loaded with seed oils, probably
right,
mayonnaise
exactly. And
based.
then like same thing with Buffalo Wild Wings, but allegedly some people in my Discord have said that some of the franchised locations that aren't owned by the major corporate entity have like switched to
Huh.
vegetable oil, so you want to
Yeah.
be careful there. But again, the problem with Buffalo Wild Wings is that many uh or I have a blog post about it, but I think all except 2 of the sauces don't you do contain seed oils. um so again, you got to be careful with the sauces, go with the dry rub. um yeah,
Have you looked
so
at the Southern chain Glory Days Grill?
no, I'll make a note.
They're,
Yeah,
they're,
I am trying to get out of my my New York bubble is very good. So
they're in
I
Florida,
definitely
Georgia, North Carolina, all those southern states, and they are a wing place. And from what I understand, they use beef tallow, so they can add them. Maybe investigate that.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean and that's like that is kind of the beauty of it, right? Is like I think as this grows, like people will be proud and excited to kind of like claim their like be the first person to kind of say like, hey, like, these people don't cook with seed oils in my region, right? Eventually, so there's like a point system in the app. You get the points are called EVOO, like extra virgin olive oil, and you get points for filing new reports if they're quality reports and they don't get flagged or removed. And
And what
so
does that do to what's the rewards you get for accumulating points?
so it's not launched yet, but my plan is to have leaderboards in every city,
That's
right?
cool.
So
Yes.
whoever has
Gamification, huh?
yes. I mean, that's a
Smart.
good mimetic lever, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
people have done
What do you get? Do you
crazier.
get free? Do you get discounts on the food that you sell or something?
Well, we're not there yet, maybe
Yeah.
eventually, but I think what I would do, my plan in the short term is to say, like, let's say you have the most Evo in Austin, Texas, right?
Right.
If I move, let's say, and then I fly from New York to Austin, when I open up the app in Austin, it'll have like I'll let the leader of the leaderboard have like a welcome message and maybe like a link to their Twitter account or something. So it'll
Uh-huh.
be like, hey, welcome to Austin. The head scout here is, XYZ. Here's their Twitter account.
So you're
And
kind of
like,
tapping into that mimetic religiosity about food there. Gotta like that, huh? This is
yeah,
our
yeah,
this is our bishop of the Austin diocese of the seed oil.
right, exactly. Well, yeah, it's
Some
almost
may
like
not find notoriety of value. They may want more of a transactional, like give me free chips or something. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, people have done some crazy things for glory. I
Right.
think I think people I think I don't need everyone filing reports from what I've found, right? And this is pretty much expected, right? Like, like maybe like 1 to 2% of the people they file tons of reports, right? Like
Right.
they love it. And then like, 98% of the people just like tap around the app and see what's up. So it's really about rewarding
Do
the
you
people.
are you tapping into kind of that Karen energy that some people have? Like I'm tattling on you. You don't have good oils. Are you do? Is there a dark mimetic
Um,
effect going there probably, or is it more of the positive? Like I'm liberating. I mean, I'm sure it's all kind of
I
two
would
sides of the
say
same coin, but
I've definitely done both, right, on my social media and otherwise, right? Like I've written very nasty reviews of certain restaurants that are trying to be funny, right? Like, and that's definitely one side of it. And then, the other side is like
But that would be
trying like
but you don't want to tap into that too much because then it'll get a reputation of being a restaurant bully, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I really don't want that, right? Like because again, like the restaurant industry is a super tough business and like
Yeah.
there's no use in like uh trying to like punish or be mean to people who are, trying to run a business and kind of just haven't, they're just kind of for whatever reason just ignorant of it. They don't think they're poisoning you or with it's not intentional, right? So
Sure, yeah.
I definitely I don't want to be like evil about it, but
Forgive us,
there
Father. We
there
do not know what we're doing, right? And that's the
right,
bottom line.
exactly. But
But go
there's some
ahead.
fun in the community. There's definitely some fun in being a little negative in the community. I don't think it's like gotten toxic yet.
What do you
If
mean
it
by
does,
community? Like your Discord, or what is your where's your
uh
primary community place for conversations about this?
so I guess like when I just said that, I more meant like just like guys like Seed Oil Disrespecter, Tucker Goodrich, who are talking about it, like they
Right,
definitely like make some very negative jokes
right.
for sure, right? Like, I mean, as far as like the community on my app, yeah, our Discord is probably like the best place to
You don't have
go.
a chat, you don't have a message board format on your app, right? You know.
I'm thinking of adding one, but I don't, you know, I was thinking maybe like adding it, but making it kind of like hidden and invite only or something, because
Yeah.
I don't really want to manage like
Right.
moderating.
Right. Right.
You can get into trouble with like that type of stuff when people start, posting nonsense or arguing with each other. So we'll see if I ever anything
I'm
like that.
generally very skeptical of like state intervention into markets like this, but I'm at the point, and I've been saying publicly, for a little bit, that we should just go ahead and ban seed oils. Do you think that's a good idea? And what I mean by that is obviously you would account for having a transitionary period of grace to get people to be able to switch over. It wouldn't be an overnight thing, and you'd have to do it in a very kind of light touch, but kind of way. But I just think that it needs to be, firmly in the Overton window, this discourse that these are extremely toxic
I mean,
substance and they're carcinogenic. They're known carcinogenics. As I've talked to with Tucker Goodrich on the show many times, it's like, that I think it's the FDA or something has a policy that if it's something that's proven to be a known carcinogen and animal models, that it de facto gets banned into human food. So, I mean, there's already things on the books that should lead to this if it's presented and scientifically grounded and consistent way.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at what happened to trans fats, right? Like there's definitely a pathway there. Um, I think it would be the right, you know, there I'm sure there's some applications you could think of where like you'd want to allow it. But you know,
Like what?
I,
For
I
engine
don't know.
lubrication?
Uh, okay, like I don't know. There's a place, there's a place called the Tin Building, which is this new like very high-end food hall in New York City, and they have like these ultra gourmet seed oils, like cold pressed pumpkin seed oil, or like certain Asian cooking,
Yeah.
right? Like if you want like like a nice unrefined like sesame oil or peanut oil because some like Asian um like recipe calls for it. Like I don't necessarily think it should be like illegal to buy like those kinds of oils, right? But definitely like the refined and heavily processed stuff that's cooked with at high heat, at like the bulk of what people are eating. Uh, yeah, I mean, some of the stuff like Bloomberg was trying to do with sugar and like limiting sugar consumption and stuff. It just it's so hard to see how you would roll it out in America because it would definitely like shock the food system significantly. But it honestly like you're kind of right in that like because it's so nefarious in that like you can't taste it, right? Like at least with sugar you kind of know what
Right,
you're doing
right.
to yourself, right? Like
You can kind of taste it if you're familiar with it, of course, when it's instant.
yeah, but like most people it's not something you
No.
would like really think about or register. So like it is because of that, it does seem like intervention would be more warranted. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, like I think the way trans fats were kind of banned would be great. And
Do
again,
you
supermarkets probably would be first.
Right. Do you believe that do you leave the opaqueness of the problem with some of the high PUFA content and olive oil and avocado oil should just be left alone as a kind of don't ask, don't tell policy on your app? Or do you believe in helping people see that part? Because I do think if we're going to be truly honest and really considering the human person's health first and foremost, there does need to be a little bit of that taken into consideration for people, right? Because when you just kind of squint your eyes and eat your olive oil, oh, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. No, it's like, no, this is not about really the let you know this is not about the appearance of what's healthy. We really want to get you healthy, and if you're eating a food that's at a restaurant that's, oh, it says olive oil, we're just going to squint our eyes and assume that no, there's no seed oils there, let's not worry about that. You know what I mean? How do you account for that? Avocado
Yeah,
oil too, you know.
no, absolutely. I mean, so I I've chosen at this point to not try to fight that battle in the app. When I initially was rolling out the app, I like kind of had olive and avocado oil were labeled as potentially like a no, like orange or like, you know, unclear. But I think, you know, for now, I'm kind of sufficiently convinced that despite the higher PUFA content, you're still better off eating olive oil. I mean, just as opposed to seed oil, like as just
Even if they're diluted with, even if, because I
well,
mean,
no, no. So I specify for blends, right? Like blended oil, definitely not.
but what
Right.
if you don't know that? Like, well, that's what I'm saying. You know how the labeling issue, like with
Oh,
olive oil, and I've heard it's with avocado oil too. How do you just kind of, again, kind of avert your eyes and say, well, let's just nothing to see here. Let's just whistle past the graveyard. It's like, how do we integrate the truth of like, well, that label has, I mean, I don't know if there's an ability to know by label, but like to be able to explain to people, like, even though it doesn't say it's a blend, this actually may be diluted with a lot of PUFA. You probably want to avoid eating this on a regular basis.
yeah. I it's hard, right? I try in the prompts that I send to the restaurants to make clear that like it wouldn't be acceptable if it was a blend, right? And I do have label like if the restaurant tells me that they use a blend, I label it as a blend and that counts as just seed oils, right? Um, I don't know, you know, it's hard to really
Do you know if
some
any of the
restaurants.
trade wholesale brands of olive oil, have you been able to investigate any of that to say, I think that one's probably got some dilution in it of seed oils?
No,
Is there ability to
I
do that? That might
I
help, you
haven't
know?
I haven't done it myself.
Yeah,
I think it probably wouldn't be like overly expensive, right? I think you would just need to buy some of them and send them to a lab, right?
right,
So, you know, if the movement grows, right, like I could potentially crowdfund stuff like that, right? Like where
sure.
we take like, you know, I'm always like kind of peering into the kitchens at restaurants to see what they use, right? And like I know for one example, like a lot of Italian restaurants use this like olive oil called Jewel of Tuscany, right? Which is like, I don't know, it's definitely like sold in bulk, right? But it does claim to be like pure olive oil. And you know, yes, it would be great if I had like enough people in the app, we could crowdfund a lipid analysis of say Jewel of Tuscany, right?
Right.
And from there you could just kind of label like which oil each restaurant uses potentially, right? Because like, you know, each restaurant doesn't, you know, they don't know we're all coordinating on seed oil gout. So if we find out a restaurant, if one review says the restaurant primarily uses olive oil, someone else can email them and be like, hey, which olive oil do you use? And they might answer, right? So, you know, the more we can slowly build up this data set, right? Right now, I don't have the resources to do that kind of
So what are the biggest
investigation,
things
but
you need to, because I like the concept of your mission. I think it's exciting. I think it's necessary. And what are the things you need, both maybe, the back end side of things and the front facing side from people? You know what I mean?
I really just so like, you know, what I'm like kind of struggling with, right, is just like my, you know, allocating my time, right? And
Right.
because I feel that my time's best spent like building the app, right? And like adding new features because no one else can really do that, right? But what I really need to for the movement to take hold is to promote the app, right? So I'm wrestling with like you know, all these like image editing software and stuff trying to make like cute like blog posts and like, you know, fun little tweets and tweet threads and stuff that go viral, to just try to get the app more visibility, right? So like really, I mean, you know, again, thank you so much for having me on. Like,
Yeah.
I just need kind of exposure to the app, right? Like when people hear about it, they download it and they love it, right? Like, all of our reviews are 5 stars and stuff. So I just need more, allies and kind of advocates to get people into the app, and probably some time. But
is your app
yeah,
the only one that does what it does on the restaurant and thing and the whole?
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything similar. So yeah,
Well,
I mean, you can
and is
just,
it available for all? It's iOS. I'm looking at our website now, seedoilscout.com, iOS and Android.
yeah.
Um,
So
very
if you click that link on desktop, it'll take you to the iOS App Store. But if you open it on your phone, it'll take you to whichever is appropriate for your phone. You can just search Seed Oil Scout or even just Seed Oil in either app store. And yeah, so it's ready to go.
do you have a functionality for browser based for for desktop, so they can?
So I could theoretically build that, but it would be a little tricky. So I haven't done that yet. I hope to get to that.
I keep giving you a laundry list of things I want you to add.
No, I
that's
mean,
good. That's good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate it. And I also like, if anyone has feedback on the app, I encourage.
I haven't even
people to
used it
kind of-
yet, so I'm not even giving you feedback. I'm just thinking of things on the top of my head, So
Yeah, no, it's all good stuff. It's just like, again, it's hard, when as a single person to kind of,
well, you're not a single
get all
person.
that.
You've got a community around you. You've got the most electrifying show in media behind you with this, from what I've
Exactly.
heard, and so you're ready to go. So don't worry about that. Just keep doing what you're doing, and we're excited to see where it goes. So check out seedoilscout.com, and thank you, sir, for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Very good. Take care.
Thank you.